Well, hi, everybody. I'm Mark Healey. I'm the editor-in-chief of the Wave newspaper, Rockaway's newspaper, since 1893. And it's my pleasure and my privilege to welcome David Weprin. He is a New York State Assemblyman, and he is running for New York City Comptroller. Good morning, David, and thank you for riding the wave.
Good morning, Mark. It's a pleasure to ride the wave with you.
Let's get right to it. Obviously, it's been written about, especially a little bit more this weekend, that the comptroller race seems to be flying under the radar a little bit, and especially here in Rockaway, where we have two city council seats up for grabs. Everyone can't wait to get Bill de Blasio out of office, so everybody's focusing on the mayor's race. But the comptroller race, which I think is incredibly important, seems to be, as I said, flying under the radar. Why do you think that's the case?
Well, as you pointed out, the mayor's race is getting more attention, and a lot of people just don't understand what the comptroller does. Everybody understands the mayor is like the chief executive of the city, and the leader for the city. Basically proposes a budget, but nobody understands what specifically the comptroller does, and it does many functions. It's a very large office. There are about 760 employees. There are 14 different divisions in the comptroller's office, but a couple of the primary responsibilities are to invest the cumulative pension funds, 5 separate pension funds, totaling $250 billion, about $253 billion. It's one of the largest pension fund systems in the country. And also, you have a check on the mayor through the audit function by auditing city agencies. And you also certify the budget and sign contracts with the city, enforce prevailing wage laws, and actually are in charge of the debt issuance function of the city, which is the public finance division, which floats bond issues for infrastructure needs, for housing, for hospitals, for schools. So that's another very important function. And I have relevant background in that particular because I worked on Wall Street for 25 years in municipal finance. So that's something that no one else is focusing on. And I think I have the relevant background to help bring New York City back, because I was chair of the finance committee of the city council for 8 years in the Bloomberg years, when we had 2 tough fiscal crises, right after 9/11, and then also during the 2008 recession from Wall Street.
Oh, so you think financial experience plays a role? I'm kidding. Okay, so I think the other concern, at least I've heard from some of our readers, is that there was a time when Scott Stringer was very popular here in Rockaway, especially during the first 4 years of his term. And I think that when it became clear that he was going to run for mayor and he endorsed Bill de Blasio, it seemed that the check that he was, keeping the city agencies, as you said, as oversight, making sure that the city was spending the taxpayers' money in a judicious way, that seems to have gone awry a little bit over the last year and a half as Scott was running for mayor. So I think one of the things I'm most concerned about, because I wrote about it in Friday's paper, is that, as a comptroller, we don't want somebody who's looking for another job. We kind of want, and I said this to Ross, your chief of staff, that we need a Vulcan. We need somebody who's, overseeing the city's money, who's not a political, has a political agenda, somebody who's not looking for another office. Can you speak to that as far as what your goals are as comptroller?
Oh, absolutely. When I was endorsed by the Daily News just this past Saturday, that's one of the things they emphasized was my finance experience, but also that I'm not looking to use the office as a stepping stone to run for mayor. And that's been a problem because almost every comptroller for the last, 50 to 100 years have used it as a platform to run for mayor, but it particularly becomes a problem with term limits, because if you can only do 2 terms as comptroller, it's almost like your second term, if you're planning on running for mayor, is not focused on doing the job and doing the best for the pensioners in the city, over 700,000 of them, about 704,000, or for keeping a track of the mayor's agencies. You're more concerned with making political decisions that can help you run for mayor, and it shouldn't be that way, and that's problematic.
Here's the other thing which I find interesting about your candidacy, and that is that when a lot of other politicians seem to be, blaming the NYPD, and certainly the NYPD is has certainly not above criticism. No one thinks that, but the fact that you're willing to understand that that defunding, or as Scott Stringer proposed last year about defunding $1 billion, as if the NYPD is the only agency or an agency in the city that is not spending its money wisely. I think scapegoating the NYPD certainly is not going to fly here in Rockaway, but you seem to totally go the other way from some of the other candidates that are running for comptroller.
Well, I did support the police reforms in Albany after George Floyd's, murder. That happened in Minneapolis, obviously. It didn't happen here. But, there's no question we could always use more transparency in the police department. And I think if you ask the rank and file police officers, they'll tell you that as well. But that doesn't mean you demonize an entire department, which is probably, one of the finest and most hardworking, set of police officers, men and women in the country. And the spike in crime that we've seen, recently, and particularly, in gun violence, is directly related, in my opinion, to losing 3,000 police officers over the last year. Last time we had a spike in crime a few years ago, you may remember when David Dinkins was mayor in the early 90s, the state and the city got together and did a dedicated tax called Safe Streets, Safe City, and they actually hired 5,000 new police officers, which stayed in place for many, many years. And they also hired new legal aid lawyers and court parts and social workers to deal with mental illness. So it was a combination, but the major piece of that package was having 5,000 new police officers. And there's definitely, in my opinion, a correlation to a cutback in the number of police and the rise of crime.
I think that, not that it needs to be stated, but maybe it does, because a lot of people aren't talking about it. How important it is for the city to get back on its feet, to have someone in place as comptroller to not only provide oversight to the agencies and making sure that taxpayers' money is being spent in a responsible way, but also finding ways as comptroller to make sure that this city needs, my God, let's be honest, this pandemic has wrecked the economy, and the small business owners, the people who rely on small businesses, not just for services but for employment. Obviously the city has not been great at this. Let's be honest, they haven't. So how can you, with your experience, both on the city council, in the state assembly, how can you, if you're elected comptroller, or if you win the Democratic primary on June 22nd, what's your message to folks as to why they should vote for you as comptroller, especially about the economy and the help it needs?
Yeah, absolutely, Mark. One of the things I've been saying is we're a 5-borough city. We should be a 5-borough controller's office. And I'm committed to opening up a borough office in every borough. And what would I do with those borough offices? I would use them as a focus on helping small businesses. Small businesses make up over 50% of the jobs in New York City. And they've been devastated. They've been harder hit than other places during the pandemic. And we really have to bring back small businesses. And I will use those borough offices, one, to access all the programs. We got a lot of money in stimulus money, but we don't necessarily know how to access that money, what it really means. There are a lot of federal programs. We've put state programs in place as well as city programs in the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic. And I would use those borough offices to focus on helping small businesses and some individuals, but mostly focusing on businesses to help them come back. So that's one of the things I've been saying, and I think it's important to bring back the economy by bringing back small businesses first.
I mean, certainly, given your public service, your name is not unfamiliar to people. And I know that there is some concern among voters, or at least people who, kind of look at or try to predict who's going to win, that name recognition plays a role, especially in a race for a job that even you said not everybody knows what goes into it. How do you combat that, David, as someone who, as I said, you're proud of your public service. You certainly are known to me and the people that do this for a living. But how do you reach the voter that may not know who David Weprin is, but knows who Corey Johnson is, or knows who Brad Lander is because of their very large personas?
Well, you get the message out. We have TV commercials up. We've had direct mail all over to all 5 boroughs, and we're trying to get the message out. I'm hoping that more people will focus on the controller's race. This week, I think the one who's leading by far in the polls is undecided. Right. I thought about changing my name to undecided, so I'd be way up there. But I think it's totally fluid. We're all kind of bunched together in a sense, with undecided way ahead, and I think people are going to start focusing on it. And I'm the one that's been saying that you shouldn't be using the pension funds for political purposes. It's one thing as one of 3 elected officials citywide. You certainly can take positions on issues of concern to everyone in the city. But your primary responsibility as controller is a fiduciary one, and you should be trying to get the best returns on the assets of the pension funds. Because if for some reason they fall below 7%, which they have on many, many occasions, it's up to the city of New York to make up the difference. And even though we got major infusion in the billions, which will help us in this upcoming budget, the city budget, it helped us in the state budget in April. It's a one-time deal. It's a one-shot deal. And we're anticipating multi-billion-dollar deficits for the next 4 years or so, and in the range of $4 to $5 billion. And if we have to make up the difference between the guaranteed 7% that's guaranteed to our pensioners, retirees in the city, that's going to be additional billions. And it could result in what happened in the 70s, where we had major layoffs, major budget cuts. And I don't think we want to see that here. I remember in the 70s, I'm old enough, 75, there was a library, brand new library on Union Turnpike near where I live. I don't live far from there now. And it was built, but it never opened because the city didn't have the money to operate it. And that's just one library. That happened all across the city. There were many schools that were built, but couldn't operate, couldn't open because they didn't have the money to do that. I don't think we want to go back to that in the 70s, what happened in the 70s. And, I'm committed to making sure that that doesn't happen.
One last thing, obviously the dysfunctional relationship between the mayor and the governor certainly did not help matters during this pandemic. There seemed to be a lot of jockeying back and forth as to who made what announcement and who made what decision. As comptroller, you will play a role at some point with the state comptroller in negotiating deals and trying to figure out how your office and his office or her office, if that changes, what kind of, do you think that given your ability to work at the state and the city level, gives you this unique ability to be able to negotiate deals with, let's say, the state, when it comes down to, hopefully that dysfunctional relationship changes when there's a new mayor in place. But how do you, as comptroller, try to get above that fray and work with the state on financial issues?
Well, I certainly would be working with Controller DiNapoli. I have a very good relationship with Tom. He served in the legislature with both my late father and my brother, and he's kind of been a family friend. So we have a pretty good working relationship, close relationship. But there are a lot of overlap with the controller's office. The MTA, for example, is an agency that it's technically a state agency, although it services New York City transit and the subway system and the bus system that New York City participates in. So it's something that can be audited by both the city controller and the state controller. And I would think that we'd want to coordinate some of those audits and basically have performance audits, how they can change the system, how they can operate differently. And that's something I think we need to have cooperation. In the case of the audit in general, which is really the main power that the controller has to check on the mayor, the city charter only requires the city controller to audit some aspect of every city agency once every 4 years. To me, that's not. It's kind of ridiculous that you could go be controller for 8 years and only audit some part of every agency twice during that 8-year period. I would look to audit every agency every year. The audit division is actually the largest division in the controller's office. It's 150 employees out of 760. Either those employees are not being used effectively, or maybe they're just not focused on the right audit. So I would look to audit every agency, but even more than that, the outside contracting budget of the city is now approaching 20% of the overall budget, and the upcoming budget is $98.6 billion, which might be a good number if you're taking your temperature. I'm not sure it's such a good number considering such a huge increase from the previous year, and which was 92 billion. And the reason it went up so much was because of the federal stimulus money. And I would hope, since we can spend that money over 3 years, I would hope that the current mayor and the next mayor not spend it all at once, because I think we're going to have those budget deficits I talked about, and I think we need some of that money in reserve, and it should be audited how it's being spent. I'm not sure that we know yet the best use of that money, and I think we have to we can't just jump into it and throw money at the problem. I think we really have to be careful how we spend that money. So I'm committed again to, I think there probably should be a minimum on the outside contracts that should be audited, but I certainly would definitely audit every outside contract of 100 million or more. And you probably read in the New York Times about that Bronx Parent Housing Network run by Victor Rivera in the Bronx. There was a whole scandal where he was commingling a for-profit company with not-for-profit. He hired relatives. He was accused of sexually assaulting women in the shelter. That contract was subsequently terminated because of that investigation. That should have been discovered in a routine audit. That was a $240 million contract with the city for homeless shelters. It was never audited by the city controller's office.
Well, look, there's a bunch of different things that I could go on and on and on about, but that's a whole nother show. But certainly I will promise you that if you are elected comptroller, I will bring them all to your attention, David.
Not a problem.
There's a lot of things that have gone on in Rockaway, especially over the last 4 years. And since the boardwalk was rebuilt with the FEMA allocation, we asked Comptroller Stringer's office 8 years ago for an audit of the New York parks and New York City, and how they allocated the 480 million that FEMA allocated for the reconstruction of the boardwalk. So that's definitely something I'm going to bring to your attention when you get elected.
I look forward to that, Mark. I do, and I hope to visit you again after the election as controller.
Well, best of luck to you. Certainly, everyone, you can be voting now early at the Rockaway YMCA on Rockaway Beach Boulevard in Arvern. And if people want to learn more about your campaign and how they can help, where do they go, David?
David for NYC.com. So it's David, FOR, NYC.com.
Thank you so much for your time this morning. And I know you got a lot of campaigning to do. So take care and be safe.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.